Imagine you are floating 400,000 kilometers from Earth. No ground beneath your feet, no air outside the window, nothing but a thin shell of metal separating your body from the most hostile environment the universe has ever created. You look through the porthole, and Earth is there, small, blue, impossibly beautiful, like a marble someone left behind in an endless dark room. And for one brief moment, everything feels peaceful, but the radio just went silent. April 1st, 2026. 4 astronauts are sealed inside the Orion spacecraft, riding a controlled explosion into the black. The mission is historic. Artemis II, humanity's first crewed journey beyond low Earth orbit in over 50 years. The plan is clean, almost elegant. Fly around the moon, test the systems, come home. 10 days, that's all. 10 days between the human race and the longest silence in history. You are Commander Reed Wiseman. You've trained for this moment for years. Every simulation, every pressure test, every emergency drill. You know this spacecraft better than you know your own house. You trust it. You have to, because right now, trust is the only thing keeping you alive. And here things take a turn. The moon grows larger in the window. It doesn't look welcoming. It never did. Not really. It looks dead, scarred, ancient beyond imagination. A world that absorbed billions of years of cosmic violence and never flinched. You are heading directly toward it. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a small voice whispers what your training never quite taught you to silence. What if we don't come back? Here is something nobody tells you about deep space. It isn't empty. That's the terrifying part. It looks empty. It sounds empty. The silence outside Orion isn't peaceful, it's predatory. It is the silence of a place that was never designed for you, a place where the rules of survival that kept your ancestors alive for millions of years mean absolutely nothing. On Earth, if something goes wrong, you adapt, you find shelter, you call for help, you wait. In the 400,000 kilometers between the moon and home, there is no shelter, there is no waiting, there is no rescue mission being assembled somewhere below. If the engine fails at lunar distance, no spacecraft on Earth can reach you in time. The physics are unforgiving, the math is brutal. You are, in every meaningful sense of the word, alone. NASA knows this. They've calculated it. They've modeled every failure scenario with the cold precision of people who have sent humans to their deaths before and never want to do it again. The engineers who built Orion worked with one singular obsession: bring them home, because history remembers what happens when that obsession falters. But the problem lies here. No matter how many simulations you run, space always finds a way to introduce a variable nobody modeled. The Orion spacecraft is a marvel of human engineering. It weighs over 26,000 kilograms. Its heat shield is the largest ever built, designed to withstand temperatures of nearly 2,760 degrees Celsius during re-entry, hotter than the surface of the sun. It carries life support systems with redundancies built upon redundancies. Every critical component has a backup. Every backup has a backup. And yet, Apollo 13 had redundancies too. It launched on April 11th, 1970. With 3 astronauts and the full confidence of NASA behind it. 56 hours into the mission, an oxygen tank exploded. Not because someone was careless, not because the engineering was poor, because a single wire, insulated with a material that couldn't handle the voltage, sparked at exactly the wrong moment in exactly the wrong tank. A detail, a small, quiet, invisible detail. And 3 men nearly died 321,000 kilometers from home. The crew of Apollo 13 survived because of extraordinary improvisation, extraordinary luck, and the fact that they were close enough to use the lunar module as a lifeboat. Artemis II has no lifeboat. What it does have is something called a free return trajectory, a path so precisely calculated that even if the engine never fired again, the spacecraft would still swing around the moon and head back toward Earth. It is one of the most elegant pieces of orbital engineering ever conceived. But elegant doesn't mean invulnerable. If the life support systems failed completely beyond the moon, if pressure collapsed, if the air processing broke down beyond repair, the free return trajectory would still bring the capsule home. It would just arrive with no one alive inside it. The physics care nothing for the people within, and it gets worse. You cannot see radiation. That is what makes it so terrifying. It passes through the walls of your spacecraft the way light passes through glass. It passes through your body the way a ghost passes through a wall. And in the space beyond Earth's magnetic field, it is everywhere. On Earth, you are protected by two invisible shields working in concert: the planet's magnetic field and the atmosphere. Together, they absorb, deflect, and scatter the constant bombardment of high-energy particles streaming from the sun and from deep cosmic sources billions of light years away. You walk outside on a clear day and feel nothing because you are wrapped in a protection system 4 billion years in the making. In the Orion capsule, beyond the moon, that protection disappears entirely. The astronauts of Artemis II will absorb more radiation in 10 days than most people receive in an entire year. Under normal solar conditions, this is manageable. Dangerous, but manageable. NASA has measured it. They've calculated the long-term cancer risk. They've decided it falls within acceptable parameters. The astronauts themselves have signed off on it with clear eyes. But the sun does not follow schedules. And here is where the fear becomes real. A solar particle event, a sudden eruption from the sun's surface, can flood space with lethal radiation in minutes, not hours, minutes. The warning systems on Earth can detect one forming, but the particles themselves travel fast enough that the window between detection and arrival can be dangerously small. Inside Orion, the crew would retreat to the most shielded section of the capsule and wait. But shielding only does so much. A major event, the kind that happens rarely but does happen, could deliver a radiation dose that begins to break down the human body at the cellular level within hours. There is no treatment 400,000 kilometers from the nearest hospital. There is no evacuation. There is only the capsule, the crew, and the invisible storm passing through them like they aren't even there. But that's not the worst of it. Of every moment in the Artemis II mission, there is one that keeps engineers awake at night more than any other. It doesn't involve a dramatic engine failure or a catastrophic explosion. It is quieter than that, more absolute. It is the 40 minutes when Orion disappears behind the moon entirely. On April 6, 2026, at 6:44 p.m. Eastern Time, all communication between the crew and Earth cut out completely. No signal in, no signal out. 4 human beings, farther from home than any humans had ever been in history, were suddenly and completely unreachable. Mission control in Houston went silent. The screens still showed the spacecraft's last known trajectory, but the people inside, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, Jeremy Hansen, were beyond reach, beyond help, beyond anything anyone on Earth could do. For 40 minutes, they were entirely on their own. If something had gone catastrophically wrong in those 40 minutes, a sudden pressure failure, a fire, a life support collapse, mission control would have known nothing until Orion emerged from behind the moon. By then, the window for any meaningful response would already have closed. There is no rescue, there is no cavalry, there is only the silence and the math and the 40 minutes that everyone was watching a clock for without admitting why. At 7:25 p.m., communication resumed. The crew was alive, the moment passed, but the possibility encoded within it did not. NASA does not dwell on this scenario in press conferences. It exists in the technical documents, buried in probability assessments and failure mode analyses. The probability is considered extremely low, but probability is not impossibility. And in deep space, the difference between those two words is everything. And here things take a turn into something older and darker than engineering. The psychological dimension of this mission is something science can measure, but cannot fully prepare you for. Astronauts on the International Space Station are, at most, a few hundred kilometers above Earth. They can see it through the window, vast and close, filling their entire field of vision. The connection feels real. From lunar distance, Earth shrinks, not metaphorically, literally. It becomes a small circle of blue and white, smaller than your thumbnail held at arm's length. Mission specialist Christina Cook floated to one of Orion's windows and looked back at the planet she had left behind. In the photograph she took, Earth is a sliver of light at the edge of the frame, a pale crescent, barely distinguishable from the stars surrounding it. That image is not dramatic. That is what makes it devastating. Commander Reed Wiseman posted his own photos from the window and wrote words that were simple in their phrasing and enormous in their weight. What he described, without quite saying it, was the sensation that has no name in any language designed for people who have always had ground beneath their feet. The Apollo astronauts described profound and sometimes destabilizing experiences of cosmic smallness. Edgar Mitchell, returning from the moon, described an overwhelming sense of the universe as a living thing, a sensation that changed him permanently. But Mitchell came home. What happens to the human mind if something goes irreversibly wrong? 4 people in a capsule the size of a large SUV, in darkness that has no end, with full knowledge of what is coming. The human nervous system was not built for this. Evolution did not prepare us for the moment when there is genuinely nothing left to do. But the problem lies here. The universe has never cared what we were built for. NASA puts the probability of a catastrophic failure on Artemis II at less than 1 in 200. That sounds reassuring, until you think about it differently. It means that if you flew this mission 200 times, statistically, 1 crew does not come home. 4 people gone. Not in an explosion that the world watches in horror, but in a slow, quiet drift into an orbit that has no name and no end. The Challenger crew died in 73 seconds. The Columbia crew died in 16 minutes. Both were tragedies that stopped the world. But there is a category of space death that is somehow harder to hold. The death that takes days. The drift. The waiting. The final communication from a crew that knows the mathematics better than anyone and has accepted what the numbers say. No human has ever died that way. Not yet. But the possibility exists, coded into the physics of every deep space mission ever flown or ever planned, like a clause in a contract written by the universe itself. This is not a criticism of Artemis II. It is an acknowledgement of what the crew already knows, what their families already know, what the people watching the mission coverage already know. On some level, they try not to look at directly. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something matters more. Imagine the final scenario, not because it will happen, but because somewhere in your chest, the possibility lives. The spacecraft is heading home. Earth grows slowly in the window, from a dot to a marble to a disk to something that fills the porthole with blue and white and the green-brown of continents. The crew is tired but alive. Re-entry is minutes away. Then, the heat shield fails. At 40,000 kilometers per hour, re-entry without a functioning heat shield is not survivable. The capsule does not slow down. It does not break apart dramatically. It burns. The temperatures involved exceed those on the surface of the sun. In less than a minute, Orion becomes a streak of light in the upper atmosphere that people on the ground might look up and call beautiful, not knowing what they're watching. This too is in the technical documents. This too has a probability that engineers have calculated and considered acceptable. And this too is something the crew signed for with their own hands. Artemis II is not just a mission, it is a statement, a declaration that the human species looks at a universe vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond reckoning, and indifferent beyond measure, and chooses to go anyway, chooses to climb into a machine and light it on fire and aim it at the dark. The 4 astronauts of Artemis II know every risk in this script. They know the radiation calculations. They know what the 40 minutes of silence behind the moon means. They know what the heat shield means at re-entry speed. They have sat in rooms with engineers and gone through every failure mode with the careful attention of people who intend to survive. And then they climbed into the capsule anyway. That is not recklessness. That is something else. Something the universe doesn't have a name for, because the universe does not produce meaning on its own. Only we do that. But here's the thought that stays with you after the coverage ends and the screens go dark and you lie in your bed at night with the ceiling above you and nothing but air between you and space. The universe was not built for us. It does not want us to survive. It does not want anything. The stars do not watch. The void does not wait. There is no force in the cosmos that cares whether those 4 people come home. The laws of physics will apply with perfect equality whether the mission succeeds or whether it becomes the longest, quietest tragedy in human history. And they went anyway, because maybe that's the only answer to a universe that doesn't care. Not to stay home, not to build walls and call the distance safe, but to go, to push past the edge of everything familiar and float in the dark between worlds and look back at the small blue dot that made you, even if you never see it again. The Orion spacecraft, named Integrity by its crew, is on its way home. Splashdown is scheduled off the coast of San Diego on April 10th, 2026. And somewhere behind the moon they flew around. In the cold silence they crossed and survived. The universe waits, neither welcoming nor hostile, simply vast, simply indifferent, simply there, as it always has been, as it always will be, long after we are gone.